I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Thursday night in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, traveling around the Midwest this week, one of the most prominent questions that I was asked was about fall. It was mainly around harvest time period, what we were expecting in terms of precipitation. Was there any risk of early frost coming? And also wanting to know about fall application time period. So let's address those things. First map you're looking at here, I've shown you this before recently. This is the new National Multi-Model Ensemble forecast for precipitation here for September, October, November. All right, and what we notice in this forecast is it is very La Nina-like, and what I mean by that is we do see a broader area across much of the United States, which will be heavy into harvest here, showing drier than average conditions. As I've stated in the last couple of weeks, this is always a very difficult time to forecast, especially from Texas into the Mid-South over into the Southeast for the risk of any tropical system that could get in here. We're going to cover those tropics in a few moments. This same question that was asked me by a bunch of Midwestern growers, though, is going to be weighing heavily in the minds in the West, and especially into California. And most of the models do suggest that we could see an early start to our wet season here, especially in the Pacific Northwest and even Northern California. And it is nice to see that the model isn't really biasing California dry going forward into this time period. Now, we've also seen the European model for that same time period, September, October, November. And these maps will all update on, let's see here, September the 5th. So we're going to be getting some new data here pretty soon. What do we again notice? The western United States is showing up with a wetter bias, and we do see a broader section of the country showing up mostly with either near normal to drier than normal conditions. And then we complement this finally with the outlook from the CPC. So this is the Climate Prediction Center. This is coming from NOAA. And you see a very similar outlook overall here. Broader warmth across the country. No indications of an early frost that could be coming through that really could hit the northern plains and pockets of the Midwest. And we overall see maybe some early arrival of better moisture in the west, while much of the central part of the United States into the Ohio Valley sees drier conditions. The wild card again will be down here in the south. Okay, so that's a quick review of some of the things we've been thinking about. What I want to do is I want to show you a couple of things that help support this. First, we're looking at the correlation with precipitation for September, October, November with the ocean temperatures in Niña region 3.4. So that means if there's an El Nino, it tends to be wetter. If there's a La Nina, it tends to be drier for everywhere that you see red. So I'll put a D here to show drier, and the cooler colors would be wetter. So notice, very similar take. Drier swath in through here and there, and throughout much of the country we have weak correlations. These are very weak correlations, but they need to be looked at here just to see how the pattern could play out. Because currently our ocean temperatures right here in the central part of the Pacific just continue to stay cooler at this point in the year. So this is one of our more dominant drivers. We have the stronger trade winds still in place, the negative Indian Ocean dipole, that would be the westerly wind burst there, and quite a bit of warm water in both the North Atlantic and North Pacific. So this is what I did to kind of add to this. I went out there using some reanalysis data from ERA 5. So this is the European model historical reanalysis data. We looked at September, October, November, and the time series tells me for Niña region 3.4, which is there, that same spot where we've got that colder water. What we looked at here was just the anomalies going back to 1950. So I wanted to know, these were our La Nina years. Let's pluck them off and then see what the corresponding precipitation patterns look like. So this is what you end up getting. So for those years, September to November, that had La Nina characteristics, we did see near normal to above normal precipitation here. It's drier throughout parts of the desert Southwest, parts of the southern plains Mid-South, and parts of the Midwest. Makes it very difficult over in the southeast because of the track of tropical systems that could come through and really upset this. But those years, again, the ones that have the spikes down, representing when there is a La Nina event in September, October, November, that's what we get in terms of the composite precipitation anomalies. So we're starting to see evidence build here overall that some of these longer term forecasts echoed by NOAA, the CPC, the global climate models like the ECMWF, they kind of have some teeth to them. They're making sense given the current ocean temperature behavior. And speaking of that, I'm going to take you again to one of my favorite sites, Tropical Tidbits. All I did was click on Analysis Tools, Ocean Analysis, and already they have it up for me, the one I want. This is the Nino Index, Ocean Temperature Index in Nino 3.4. So again, that's that middle Pacific sea surface temperature anomaly area right on the equator. And as we talked about earlier this week, the numbers are still down here between almost 0.9 C below normal. So there's definitely a La Nina in place. Further evidence of that, like we've been shown for so many weeks, we continue to see the strong trades right in through here, and then the resulting westerly wind bursts in the Indian Ocean. So there's really not been much of a change in that. And if we continue to see this pattern like we've seen for so many weeks now, the things I just presented are expected. And just want to make a point, the La Nina has really seized control of the MJO. And as you can tell, there's not a whole lot of evidence that the MJO is really going to come out of null space anytime soon here, as denoted here on this particular graphic. So in addition to this, which again is really just showing us the control of La Nina really holding up what's going on in the tropics, we can see that the whole of the atmosphere, especially the northern hemisphere, just continues to stay at a low momentum state. That's all very characteristic of La Nina. So what I'm trying to do is build evidence here that this La Nina will likely control our pattern for a little while. So we take all that logic, and I want to now apply it to the southern hemisphere spring, specifically in South America, because this was another major area of questions. And what you're seeing here was released back at the beginning of August, looking at the September, October, November outlook for precipitation anomalies. And the story was that we were seeing wetter conditions to the north and drier conditions to the south. This hit Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina. So this is, I make a statement, this is a very La Nina-like look to a spring outlook for September, October, November. Now remember, if this were to verify, we could likely get a very quick plan in the north, but see drought issues develop farther to the south. So to see if we kind of buy into this, knowing that we have a La Nina right now, I did the same thing. I just looked though at October and November. That's really when the monsoon gets going. And I looked back across Brazil, specifically their northern growing areas here, and said, find me those years that were really dry. I wanted to know what happened in northern Brazil when it was really, really dry in October and November. And when I did that, I basically came up with this composite map. So I'm trying to figure out why the models are saying wetter to the north and drier to the south. And if we're going to have really dry conditions in the north, in other words, if this is going to be wrong, then we would have to see something really drastically change in the Pacific Ocean, because those years where we had dry conditions in northern Brazil also had an El Nino. And we do not have this right now. Just to be clear, this is what our ocean temperatures look like. So this is also kind of giving us some evidence that the likelihood of seeing maybe a quicker start to the monsoon is in the cards for this part of Brazil, but possibly drier risks farther to the south. And that's been something we've kind of been concerned about for a while, that the drier conditions farther to the south. Now, how long is the La Nina going to last? This is an animation where you're starting off here over South America. This is closer to Australia. This is the top of the Pacific Ocean, and this is depth, so going down to 450 meters. And what you notice is that throughout July into August, there's quite a bit of cooler water still in place here to upwell. It started off with some warmer conditions, but now you see those anomalously cold waters. They're there to upwell. So I think the La Nina is going to continue into our fall. But the big question remains, will this La Nina last beyond that? Now the European model, which again will update let's see here, September the 5th, it's got pretty large spread, but it's not showing very many of its ensemble members redeveloping and deepening the La Nina into winter. In fact, it's kind of keeping it pretty steady state and maybe past the new year starting to fade. The European model's not been the go-to on this, as I've been explaining here. It's really done poorly. What's been doing the best, honestly, has been Noaa and their models. And so I want to show you the newest update here. Let's shrink that up so you can see it. From the CFS V2 model, that is a Noaa model. And you notice that through October into November, they expect ocean temperatures maybe to go down a little bit, but then really make a bounce after that, possibly suggesting neutral conditions maybe by the start of the new year. So this is going to be a very important piece that's going to affect the forecast after what we discussed here at the beginning of this video. Now, to give you a little bit more detail on September, this is the September 10 to October 10 precipitation outlook. And you do notice that we see drier conditions in through here. And even though there's some wetter conditions showing up here and in through parts of the Canadian prairie, I think overall the forecast skill in September is going to be very low. And the reason for that is going to be, if we have such little momentum in the flow of the atmosphere, it could get blocked very quickly and alter this. Plus, we are at that time of year where tropical systems should be really cranking. Certainly, the 2022 season has been far below normal. We're at about 10% of our normal accumulated cyclone energy, with, I believe, only 3 named systems so far. But we're right now moving into that time where things can really get going. And looking here at some satellite data, there are a few areas that we're continuing to watch. There's an easterly wave coming off of Africa. There's one that's already here. There's some organized convection we've been watching going over the Lesser Antilles. And there's even a weak area right here that's going to move off to the north. So thinking about those regions, I just want to point out here that over the last couple of, maybe the last week or so, in the Gulf of Mexico, the wind shear's come down below average. In the Caribbean, it's come way down below its average value. And even the whole of the tropical Atlantic, which is still sitting slightly above normal, is going to start to fall off as we go forward. And why do I say that? I say that because when we think about the impacts that the primary controls, I should say, on tropical systems, wind shear and ocean temperatures are the big ones. So we've had dry air in place. That's kind of fading. We've got warmer ocean temperatures here and in the Caribbean and in the Gulf. That's supportive, also off the southeast coast. And now you've seen in these 3 areas I put X's, the wind shear values start to come down. And so we watched all day for the updates from the National Hurricane Center, and this is their 2 p.m. update today. They've still got the lead wave here, the one that's over the Lesser Antilles at 20% chance of development, and the one that's behind it at also 20%. And what I'm just getting concerned about here is that the models are really getting, I don't know if this is the right word, but kind of getting excited about producing these things. They do that this time of year. And so you see there's a system of storm tracks that come here and another wave behind it. And whatever ends up happening with this, once it gets through the Caribbean, it could eventually come, into the Gulf of Mexico. So while at this point I have to just lean heavily on the National Hurricane Center's analysis and support it with the European model and the GFS, but I just want to let you know that expect to see some rapid changes in these forecasts for the tropics very, very soon. I think we're going to start to see some changes coming in real soon. And here's some of the supporting evidence for why. The subtropical ridge has sat here all summer long. It's not really ever migrated and sat up over the middle part of like Tennessee. It's not done that. It's been elongated somewhere between here and here. And you can see the flow coming around it. What's important is this flow down here is doing something like this. This flow's coming around just like that. And what this is going to really do is not only guide any would-be tropical system in this direction, but it's also going to influence the return of moisture over the next couple of weeks into the middle part of the country. Because I got you parked here on Saturday. And can you see this large plume of stronger winds coming up out of the Gulf and out of the Central Plains? That's going to contain quite a bit of moisture, and that's also going to be the main source for instability with a series of storms I'm going to be watching later this weekend. Take note, though, coming through the Columbia Basin, coming off the mountains in Montana, we could see some stronger winds to be dealing with here too, and I'll cover those temperatures in just a few moments here. Now, given that as a setup, let's go take a look at some of the recent precipitation. And this map really kind of paints a pretty tough story here from parts of the Four Corner states through Texas and southern Oklahoma, really though into Louisiana and into Mississippi and Alabama. There's a place in through here that if you look at my color bar, we're almost off the top in most locations, which would represent more than 10 inches of rainfall. There's been a stalled out, slow moving front here and a low pressure cell that kind of developed on it and just slowly moved off to the east. Now, I make these maps every morning at midnight, so this is actually, of course, old data here as we get into the evening hours on Thursday. But since then, we've had more storms in the southeast and some storm complexes that have moved through parts of the Midwest, wrapping around a low that's right here going over the Great Lakes. Other than that, still have our monsoon going and some really interesting activity in the Northwest. And this has been, for me, fascinating to watch. Let me tell you what show you what I'm talking about here. Here's the latest satellite data from this afternoon, so getting the recording to you a little earlier today than normal. And as I just run back and forth, there are 2 swirls, if you will, maybe 3 that I'm really interested in. They're 1, 2, and 3. Ready? So if we watch this again, here's the low moving over Lake Michigan, initiating some of the showers and storms. In fact, it's raining outside my house right now as I'm watching this, or making this. We then see that low right in through here, still associated with the storms that have absolutely caused devastating flooding down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley. You see a lot of storms out ahead of that. But the one that's really, I just am fascinated by is, let me show you kind of a sub-regional view, and I want to go into Washington State. because as we watch today, can you see the flow around that? I mean, it's a tight spin right here. But what's interesting to me is that the storms and the clouds are coming off the mountains to the east into the rain shadow. And that is a unique look for the Pacific Northwest. Now, these bigger storms blowing up here on this side, this is a bit more common. They're running up over the mountains and really popping. But we need to watch this vorticity maximum very carefully. Plus, a weak little shortwave that's getting yanked around the bottom side of it. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Here is this afternoon's 18Z high-res NAM model run. Okay, let's get the first two examined here. Let's start with the low that's going over the Great Lakes. We're going to see that through the overnight hours into tomorrow, producing some scattered storms that are going to end up in the northeast. So there's some desperately needed rainfall in this area. Other than that, scattered storms across the eastern Corn Belt. Down south, you see that tonight, a lot of storms lighting up along the Gulf Coast. And then again into tomorrow and working our way into Saturday, we still see more scattered storms. But now we come over to the southwest monsoon. We come over here to this little wave that ejected on the bottom side of that cutoff here, that upper level low. And what we're going to watch for tomorrow morning in the overnight hours tonight is these storms developing right here that are going to move across parts of South Dakota into North Dakota as what looks to be a little mesoscale convective system or a mesoscale convective vortex. Do you see that? I'm looking right here. I've seen this now in several model runs, and it just comes skirting right across parts of the Dakotas into Manitoba. It's supported by the upper level low that's here. But at the end of this, take a look at where we end up on Saturday evening. So there is a low running through the Canadian prairie. We're opening up the Gulf of Mexico moisture, and that's what you saw a few moments ago. And we're going to see storms setting up, on Saturday here that are going to move east on Sunday. And that's one of the areas I'm going to be watching most carefully for some heavy rainfall, potentially hitting some dry areas, and also possibly some severe thunderstorm activity. But it's these storms, come back here to a regional analysis, right in through here that we're watching right now. That's the would-be mesoscale convective vortex that I'll have to keep a close eye on. So I'm going to turn over to the European model to pick up where the high-res NAM leaves off. And just to let you know, it's in the European as well. See it? That little feature there. Now, as we get into Saturday night, you can see a broad pressure trough in here delivering storms. There will be stronger winds on the back side of this, and you can see the Gulf is open. See all the thunderstorms down here? Going through the overnight on Saturday into Sunday. This is Sunday evening. There we go. Isolated pockets of storms throughout the Midwest. More scattered storms in the southeast and throughout the Canadian prairie. That's Sunday night. This is the time where I'm worried about possibly some severe weather, and again on Monday. You see there is an upper level low that skirts right in through here. There's a vortmax, a frontal boundary behind it, and we could see thunderstorm activity here going through on Monday. Again, scattered storms in the southeast. Now, as we play through Tuesday, the front continues to clear. And we go through Tuesday afternoon and evening, and then play out to next Wednesday. This is Wednesday morning, afternoon, and evening. And that front's going to clear, high pressure is going to come in behind it, and we're going to see much drier conditions in through here. So for middle of next week, the Farm Progress Show, we're going to see some drier weather coming in here. And that lasts, as I play this all the way out to next Friday and to next Saturday, it's not going to be until that upper level ridge parks here that we start to return flow on the back side of it and open things back up for wetter weather. So we stitched together the next 7 days from the ECMWF. What I'm most excited about are some of the rains coming into Oklahoma and Kansas. It's going to be possibly some heavier rains into Iowa. That's the ECMWF. Here's the GFS. Very similar overall, but take a look at the difference in this area. The GFS, which is wetter if you see these colors, the European wetter if you see those, it's the GFS is trying to squeeze out more moisture here, especially in parts of Kansas. The European's wetter farther to the north. It's also wetter to the southeast and in Texas. But take a look at Louisiana. The GFS, again, is the more aggressive model. Just want to show you these differences. Now, where this all goes, this is where the pattern ends up by day 10, which is September the 4th. Strong bit of the jet stream coming into the northwest, running up into a ridge, but there are subtle features here out into that first week of September that I'm just going to have to watch for more storms possibly. Because if there's a ridge sitting here, we'll feed Gulf moisture into these short waves, and we're going to have to watch out for that. Plus, going into September, we start to see more hints here of troughing, which could just increase total precipitation. Where will that likely be? Well, the current model setup suggests that this area, and it's been this way for most of this week, has the best chance of seeing normal to above normal rains. We're drier farther to the north across the northern tier of the United States. So let's talk about temperatures and one last look at South America, and we'll be done here. We've already seen these highs today. As we go into Thursday, still quite hot in the Central Plains, warm across parts of the East Coast, and we're going to start to cool off, watch this, on the West Coast getting into Saturday and Sunday. See that cooler air coming in? When that happens, this is when the warm sector opens up with all that moisture into the Midwest and into the plains, and that's why we're going to watch on Sunday into Monday chances for stronger storms. Here's Monday's temperatures. Getting out to Tuesday and Wednesday, the ridge reopens in the west, and that's where we see the heat, but that ridge is going to move. So the 5-day sliding window on temperatures suggests that going fully into the first week of September, the heat pulls out of the west, moves through the Canadian prairie into the northern plains, and the models kind of leave it there for a while. There's quite a bit of spread beyond that point, and therefore we're going to have to watch these temperatures. As I stated at the beginning, I have no strong evidence that I'm going to see some sort of early devastating frost coming in this pattern. I just don't see it yet, but I'll stay on top of that to keep you informed. And one last thing I want to point out. This is the new global update for the next 45 days. And really quickly, the drought we've been discussing in southern China, continuing. The drought in the North China Plain, Manchurian Plain, possibly having some problems there. As we've seen all winter for Australia, we've had wet conditions. Europe is a bit spotty, although still quite warm in the Russian wheat belt. But it's South America. Can you take a look here? In fact, let's zoom in on South America. You see that pattern setting up we discussed. Wetter north, drier south. This gets us out to October 10th. That's going to have to be watched very carefully. I'll keep you posted. We'll talk about it again in my morning report tomorrow and also next Monday. Thanks for your extra attention tonight, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks.